everybody, how's it going today? This is Jason from Music Deconstructed. Two things. First, I apologize if you hear dogs barking in the background. We have some dogs over here today. And secondly, the video that I'm using to record this, it seems like it's kind of glitchy. So I'm not going to show myself that much. I'm just showing myself now for whatever reason. If the video ends up working, I'll keep my face in here. If it doesn't, you'll just hear the audio. Anyway, this isn't going to be a music deconstructed video. In fact, this song that I'm going to show you is a song I've already covered, but I want to show you a couple cool new plugins that I got. They're both by a company called Quiet Arts, and I'm not going to go into how to really install the plugins. There are videos on that. I can go over it if you want, if you can't find them, because these plugins integrate with Pro Tools themselves, but they're really cool. It's a way to kind of save time for you as a engineer when it comes to actually putting your tracks together. So the first thing is it's a plugin called Wave Writer, and it's really cool. I know Waves does a vocal writer plugin. I don't think that plugin's as good. I've used it before, and so now I use what's called Wave Writer by the company Quiet Arts. And it integrates within Pro Tools itself. So it actually uses the actual volume automation as opposed to Wave's Vocal Writer that uses, I think, the plugin automation. I know it's a lot more of a pain in the butt to use. So basically, the concept behind vocal writing, this mostly applies to music. I don't think I've ever used this for any kind of podcasting or anything like that. Because when you do a podcast, you're doing like an hour show, 30 minutes, and that's a lot to have to control. But when it comes to music, and by the way, I'm not saying you can't do that, but it's just more time consuming. But the whole idea is, if you look at my WAV file here, this is my song called Is This What You Wanted? My vocals aren't too bad, but a lot of times you're going to see cases where when somebody sings, if people don't have good vocal mic control, meaning they don't get, they don't back away from the mic when they scream, for example, what can happen is you can have differences in your level and your vocal levels. And so the idea is in post editing is that, the idea is to sit there and ride the fader. So what you would do, like let's say in Pro Tools, for example, is you'd go into latch mode, or into touch mode. Actually, you can do that too. Or there's a bunch of different modes for automation. I have it on latch for this plugin, which I'll explain in a second. But the idea is to sit there and ride the vocals. So when the vocals are too loud, you turn down the volume. If they're too quiet, you turn them up. And it allows you to have a more consistent level in your vocals before you actually start applying your compression and all your other plugins to the track. Because you can use compression on vocals like that, but a couple things happens. One, the compressor, depending on how big the range is on the vocals, the compressor can tend to squash the high end, and it doesn't become as transparent anymore. You can start to notice it. The other thing a compressor can do, depending on the type of compressor you use, is it can actually color your sound a little bit. Now, in some cases, this is good. I use a lot of analog emulation plugins by Waves and by Steven Slate, because it kind of gives you that analog sound that you're looking for. But to start off with, you don't want to be forced into a situation where your vocals are colored or squashed. So the idea is to use some kind of automation to get your vocals somewhat even, and then to use like a compressor and all your other stuff. It gives your vocals a more transparent leveled sound. Well, Wave Writer, and also Waves came up with Vocal Writer, allows you to do this without having to do anything. Okay, so right now, and again, I'm not going to show you all the setup to Wave Writer, because it is kind of complicated. But basically, what you have here is you have, again, you can see my vocal tracks. They're pretty even, but I'm just going to hit play, and I'm going to show you what Wave Writer can do to the vocals. Again, I'm in latch mode, and I have Wave Writer set up for this channel here. And keep in mind, I took off all the plugins for the vocal track and all the sends and returns. And also the vocals are going to be a little bit louder than the actual song is. Again, I've covered this song before, and I've even posted this song. It's on my website, A Lost State of Mind. It's like the last album you'll see. You'll hear the song in its entirety. But here we go.
I am the faceless. I'm the one who stands behind the lines. I am the faithless in a hollow world that will divide.
So you get the idea of what's happening here, right? You have as you can tell by the automation, you can see where it dips, where the song gets louder, or where the volume, or where the wave file gets louder, where my vocals get louder, and it starts to raise when the vocals get quieter. Now this plugin's cool because it does have a feature which allows you to basically it gives you a look ahead feature of 500 milliseconds. The problem with this though is there's two ways to make this work. One, it requires making a copy of the track and moving the other copy back 500 milliseconds and then going using that as the automation. The other is actually recording this automation like I just did it and then nudging the automation back 500 milliseconds. But that's only if you adjust this setting right here. But the one thing I do want to point out to people that use this program, none of these programs are perfect. Your ears are the final thing that you want to go off of it if you want to listen to, if you want it to be perfect, right? So one of the things I'll do is I'll sit here and I'll use this plugin, or in the case of Waves Vocal Writer, I would do the same thing. I would use those tools to get a basic idea of what I was going for, and then I would go back in later and do some fine-tune automation. So let's say like in this section of the wave track, this part was still too loud. I would either go in here and bring that part a little bit lower, or I would go up to my settings and I would just go ahead and just draw in the automation to where it became lower, things like that. So just keep that in mind. If you get these plugins, they're not meant to, they try to be perfect, but they're never perfect. You know how these things go. But yeah, so that's one of the things I like to do. And after I use my vocal writer, and after I've made my final adjustments to the audio track, then I'll go in and add the compression, the delay, the EQ. And again, what you have is you end up having a really transparent, leveled sound in your audio. Because let's face it, when you're singing, or whoever it is that's singing for you, when they're sitting there, they're more focused on trying to get the emotion of the music out. They're focusing on their voice. It's hard, unless you're a trained, singer. It's very hard to keep track of where your microphone is in comparison to your vocals, how loud you are. And for you singers out there, if you're just getting started in this, just keep in mind when you sing, when you get louder, back away from the mic. Not too far, but get like 12 inches away from the mic, for example. And then when you're singing softer, get closer to the mic. And of course, this goes into microphones themselves. If you use a microphone like the Shure SM7B, the closer you get, the more of a proximity effect you get, which means the deeper the voice sounds. Think of like a broadcaster, and then if you use a microphone like a Electro Voice RE320 or an RE20, those mics have a less pronounced proximity effect, so you can get away with that more. So you have to know the mic too, and luckily if you get lucky enough to be in a studio, you'll have a studio engineer that will know the mics, that will know what mic fits with you, and they'll be able to tell you all that. So that's pretty much it with that. That's vocal writing. It's a great thing to use. I know I said this before, but if you are a podcaster, you can use this plugin too. But just keep in mind that if you're doing like a 30 minutes, a minute, to an hour long podcast, or some of them can be like 3 hours, that's a lot of vocal writing that you have to pay attention to. It pays off in the end, but with something like vocals, you just want to monitor your WAV files. If you have places where it's just really crazy and loud, you might want to tame them down. But that's the tool, Wave Writer by quietarts.com or something like that. And there are tutorial videos on how to actually make this plugin work for Pro Tools. I think it's for other platforms now, but right now it's just for Pro Tools. But I think I don't know, check into that. I'm not going to look into that right now. Just woke up. They might have it for other programs, but if you have another program and you can't use Wave Writer, go to waves.com and check out the Vocal Writer. And if any of you do that, I can give you a tutorial video on how to use Vocal Writer too. It's a little bit different. Vocal Writer will actually work right away in Pro Tools, whereas with Wave Writer, this plugin right here, you have to do a lot of setting up in Pro Tools. But anyway, that's that. The next plugin that I got from the same company, it's a plugin called Defaulter. Now, Defaulter is an audio suite plugin, which means it won't load up in your regular plugins within Pro Tools. What's great about Defaulter is it allows you to set your gain staging for each clip within Pro Tools. Okay, Now, if you don't have Pro Tools and you don't have this plugin, the concept still applies and is still really important to understand. A lot of times, especially with bass tracks for me, I'll notice that like in some cases I'll record, my verse bass tracks first, and then I'll record my chorus bass tracks. And a lot of times as I'm looking, the chorus might seem either louder or quieter. Now, if you look right here, this right here, like this is my verse, and then this is my pre-chorus, and this is my chorus. You can see I've already raised the volume within my bass tracks for the chorus. I brought it up 1.2 decibels. Now, when I did this originally, I didn't have defaulter, and I just did it by eye. And by ear, but I did it by eye to watch the WAV file, but then I listened to it to make sure the bass levels were all even. With basses, you're gonna keep them level by adding a lot of compression, at least in my case I do. But it always helps before you start adding all your plugins to have your clips pretty much even. And what defaulter does is it listens to the WAV file, and within the new version of defaulter, it'll find your RMS reading, your average loudness for the clip, and then it'll adjust it accordingly, and then it'll apply that to each clip after that. And so, for example, if I go here to the last part of my verse for this song, I'm going to set this up to read RMS, and I'm going to adjust this up to about -18. Let me just keep going up. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and hit analyze. So I'm going to analyze this track. Now, right now, the clip gain is at 0 dB. Now, again, the clip gain is different from the audio. So the audio, you can see I have it like at -19. But the clip gain is different. The clip gain allows me to adjust the levels within the track without actually adjusting the whole entire track's audio. So, for example, if this clip was this big, I can come in here, and instead of adjusting audio or using automation to bring it down, I can bring the clip down just using the clip gain feature. But let's say I wasn't happy with the sound. I want it to be a certain level. I'll go ahead and hit analyze. All right, one more thing I want to say before I actually do this. This plugin is designed to be in 0.5 decibel increments. So when you see the decibels change, it's going to be 0.5 increments. The other thing I did, I had to edit this video a little bit, is I actually lowered my max level to -35. It was at -25. I made it to -18, but it depends on the clip that you're using. But basically, I had to lower this. What's going to happen, is this clip is going to raise about 2.5 decibels. But the whole idea, the thing I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to make each clip match the next clip within the track. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and analyze this clip right here, and it's going to analyze it, and it's going to bring the clip up to about 2.5 decibels, and it's done. Okay, so now I want to make this next clip, sound roughly the same. So I'm going to go ahead, analyze that, and you're going to see this raise too. It doesn't raise by much. So, but let's say I have this next clip. Let's say it's really big, right? And I could manually bring this down. I could look at it by eye, listen to it by ear. I guess this is like the lazy man's way of doing it. But it's still, to me, a cool feature. But when I go ahead and analyze this clip right here, it's going to analyze it, and it's going to bring it down, okay? Now, it was already at this level, but I just wanted to show it to you so you could kind of see it for yourself, what this plugin is capable of doing. It's a really cool thing. The important thing I want you to take away from this video, though, is when you have a bunch of different clips, and this applies mostly to songwriting, but this could also apply to podcasting, especially if you're doing interviews with people, or if you're doing a story where you have certain segments of your clips that are louder. I've noticed sometimes if I'm doing dialogue, if I've mixed an audiobook or whatever, you'll see where the author will have this part, he'll be quiet, they'll take a break, come back, and something will change. Now the next part of the audio is kind of louder. Whether you use this plugin or not, you still want to listen to the audio first, because looking at the WAV file doesn't necessarily mean that it gets louder. So the WAV file might be louder, it doesn't mean anything, because you can record a high-pitched noise in comparison to a low-pitched noise, and the high-pitched noise and the low-pitched noise might be at the same level, but the audio file is going to look bigger with the low end. So don't always rely on just the WAV file. You want to listen to it first. But if you find that it is louder, you want to adjust the clips accordingly. What this plugin is good for, and why I like to use it, in addition to relying on my ears, this plugin will actually listen to your RMS, and it'll let you know, okay, this part's a little bit louder. That's why when I actually adjusted this next clip over here, you see this looks a tiny bit lower than the clips before that. It's probably because this plugin listened to this clip and said, hey, it is a little bit louder, let's bring it down. Now, again, I'm going to go ahead and listen to it once this is all done, just to make sure. If my ears say it's the same level, it's good. It'll be good. So those are the two plugins I wanted to show you. They're tools to help you mix better. They're not tools to make you mix better, okay? At the end of the day, you always want to rely on your ears, but this will save you a ton of time. So for me, what I'm probably going to be doing in the future is I'm going to be using my defaulter to analyze my clips within each track, to try to get them all to be around the same level. And let me go on a side rabbit trail here. The reason why you want to adjust your gain accordingly with each track is because when you're mixing a song, especially a song like this, by themselves the tracks might not be too loud. So this track might show you a reading of about, let's say, minus 18 decibels, right? And of course, there are other meters you can go off of. I'm just using decibels right now. Well, it might seem quiet and you're going to be tempted to raise up the volume, but at the end of the day, when you have all these different tracks and you put them all together, the average sound is going to be a lot louder. And so if you raise everything to like 0 dB, the end result, you're going to be clipping the shit out of your song. And so you can have this really loud track. So that's why most of my individual tracks are quiet. That's why when I do these videos, I have to raise the volume of tracks for the video so you can hear what's happening. But in the song, they're not as loud, right? That's why I every video I tell you guys that. And so what this defaulter is good for is it's good for taming each individual track and having each individual track roughly the same volume. And then by the time everything comes together in your submix, you're still about minus 12 dB for mixing and mastering, and it gives you a lot of headroom to work with when you're adding different plugins and you're adding effects and you're doing all these different changes. Because before the song goes to mastering, your track doesn't have to be that loud. In fact, a lot of mastering engineers prefer your tracks not to be too loud. That way, they have more headroom to work with if they need to. Now, where the wave writer comes in is after you're like, I'm going to be using my defaulter to kind of adjust my clips. Where the wave writer comes in is now you can use a wave writer on the vocals, and you can also use a wave writer on other tracks too to tame different, other aspects depending, if I have a synth sound that's, this isn't my synth, but just to show you a wave file. If it's louder in some spots and quieter in other spots, I might use my wave writer at that point to even out my audio, and then after I do all that with all my tracks or the tracks that need it, I'll use my compression. So by the time the mix, by the time I'm at the end of doing the wave writing and the defaulting, before I actually instantiate all my plugins, I have a pretty level and even mix. And so just keep all that stuff in mind. You don't need these plugins. If you don't have Pro Tools and you're just using another program, the concepts still apply. You still want your clips to be roughly even, and you still want to use automation in your tracks to make sure everything's at an even volume. Otherwise, you're going to have a mix that's more dynamic than you want it. So that's about it. If you have any questions or if I didn't cover something, it's early in the morning, so I know I didn't cover everything, and there are other videos that go over these plugins a lot better than I have. I just want to show you how I'm going to use them, my methods, all that other stuff. So if you have any questions, let me know. Check out my music at aloststateofmind.com. And send me an email at aloststateofmind@gmail.com if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.